Hi, my friends. Welcome into this week's episode of Forte Catholic. I'm so glad that you are here and that you enjoyed your Thanksgiving. Hopefully, you got some time to break and you ate a lot of very good food. You've got a new face and a new voice on today's podcast. Sarah Allen is here. She works with me here at Forte Catholic, usually behind the scenes, but I thought it was time to put her in front of the camera. We have a great conversation about what it's like working with me, what it's like doing the kind of work that we do. And also, she gets to share her story of finding love. She got married earlier this year, and it was lovely. We're all very happy for her. So we hope that you enjoyed today's conversation. If you do, please hit subscribe wherever you are listening, or if you are watching on YouTube. We appreciate it. Enjoy today's show. Hello there. Welcome to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Schroll, and this is a new face and voice for you guys, not for me, but this is Sarah Allen. Hello, Sarah.
Hello, Taylor.
People might recognize your name because I have said your name on this show more and more over the last few months, and that's because you've been working behind the scenes on this show. So people have heard your work. I have not edited the show in months. It's all been you, and we are the better for it. So welcome to Sarah Allen, our sole employee at Forte Catholic.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. So you and I have been on camera once together. We did a YouTube video together months ago about youth ministry because you and I both used to work in youth ministry together. And you seemed confused by the prospect of being on camera. You came and recorded with me in the old studio, the one that's like right behind this wall over here. So we were very much scrunched together, and you were like, if we're ever going to record again, I would like to be in a completely different city. So today you're recording for the Dallas-Fort Worth area, but you're on screen. How do you feel about this?
Pretty good. And I was going to say that months ago, that was years ago, Taylor. That was years ago.
Did I say much? Well, maybe my editor can fix that in post.
I vaguely even remember recording that.
Yeah, it was for a youth ministry thing. So it was like, what was so funny about it is like, you're a quieter person. You don't have social media. You don't have this big following. And what was so funny about the video that you were on is that I was like so excited to talk to you, even though it was like, like everybody else on there was like Catholic famous. So it's like, I brought in like the heaviest hitters in Catholic youth ministry. People have been in youth ministry of the Catholic Church for 30 years, 20 years, the biggest name speakers. And then there's just you and me sitting in a closet like, hey, how are you? So we thought that we would continue that trend. Ever since then, not only are you not active on social media, you've completely deleted it all, other than the secret accounts that you've now created in order to post stuff for me.
Yeah. Which I'm on a little bit too often, honestly. But
I've brought you back to the dark side of social media.
I know.
So part of this was, one, there's some things that I'd like to talk to you about. First of all, just what it's like working with me, because I would imagine I don't know. As we have been preparing for this, I've been wondering how people what people listening would think it would be like to work with me. Because I've gotten a lot of feedback from people who have actually worked with me, and it's been mostly negative. But people who haven't worked with me, I don't know if the prospect seems like it would be fun or seems like it would be terrible. So we're going to we're going to find somebody who maybe has mixed opinions about it in talking with you. You also got married recently. We're going to talk about that. So that's kind of our trajectory for the day. But part of this is get to know the team, because the team has been just me for quite some time. And then now here you are working 30 hours a week for the good old Forte Catholic. So we would like to know who you are. So start when you were a baby. Tell us about Sarah Allen.
Well, from Houston, Texas, born and raised Catholic, and have always loved my Catholic faith. My parents are very devout Catholics. My dad taught RCA growing up. And so I would like sneak into their room and take these little Catholic books that were on his bookshelf and go back to my room and study them and read them. So I always absolutely loved the church. And let's see, I have one sister who is my best friend, and we're very, very close. She's married and lives in San Antonio with her 2 kids, who I am obsessed with.
And husband.
And husband, of course. Of course. I just figured that was assumed. And then I graduated from a high school in downtown Houston, right next to the Astros Stadium, which I'm sure you love and you've seen probably many times. And then moved to College Station to go to Texas A&M.
You know what? I shouldn't be shocked by any of this, but part of me is surprised that you went to Incarnate Word. I don't think I remembered that. Because the reason why is how there's an age gap between us. What is it, like 4 years, 5 years?
Yeah, it's only 4 years.
So I went to college with a lot of people who so I went to the University of the Incarnate Word, and I went to college with a lot of people who came from Incarnate Word Academy in Houston. And so one of them is like a mutual friend of ours that we used to work with. It's like I met her when I was 18, and I met a bunch of other people that went to that school that I have 100% forgotten that that's where you went to high school.
Yeah. I toured UIW, and the reason why I didn't want to go was basically it was a maximum, like it was just a huge version of IWA.
That's funny.
Even the class ring was exactly the same.
Which is funny because I went there because it's small, and you didn't go there because you say it's huge, and then you went to Texas A&M, which is literally the biggest place in the world.
I did, and I am very happy about going there. It was the best school ever. It is the best school ever. I just sound like Catherine Whitaker now. You do.
Now you gotta talk like this. I'm sure she'd appreciate that. I toured UIW this past weekend. We went and traveled to San Antonio to visit my wife's family for Thanksgiving. And I took a tour of reminiscing with my wife, who also went there, and my kids who had never been there before. We went and saw like the Christmas lights were all decorated on campus, just like they were when I was there, many, many eons ago when Christmas lights were invented. And we took a tour of the campus. So I can imagine, now I'm imagining you being there, just less happy than we were.
What? Yeah, I know. I actually remember touring A&M too when I was little. I don't remember going during Christmas lights season, but I loved going and everything. Yeah. So I graduated there in 2016. Whoop. And then I ended up staying in College Station, was trying my hardest to get out because I just was like, I need to go find another city to live in and do all this big girl stuff. And then I ended up just continuing to stay. The Lord just continued to call me to be in College Station.
Oh, wow. You're blaming the Lord for your arrested development.
What?
You're like, I want to leave, but I definitely want to move on and find stuff, but I can't find a job, so I'm going to blame God.
If you want to take it that way, Taylor, you can. And then a year and a half after I graduated from A&M, ended up working with Ablaze, which is how you and I met.
We did meet at Ablaze, and I've told the story of you and I meeting at Ablaze multiple times on the show as an example of not starting off on the right foot, and then because of you, like genuinely because of how you reacted and responded to it. I think it's probably the reason we are good friends. It's funny because I saw you and your husband 2 weekends ago, and I told him the story, which one, he hadn't heard before, which made me thankful that you hadn't told him the worst moment in our friendship. But
I tell him, I was going to say, I told him that I literally don't even remember what we got mad about.
Oh, that's good. That's good. And that makes me feel better about this because as I was telling him the story, I was like, I remember that I said something inappropriate, like that, put my foot in my mouth. And it's one of those things that's like, I make offhand comments, and I know this about myself, that I make offhand comments, and sometimes those offhand comments hurt more than I intended them to, right? Like I strike a nerve, or I say something that like I didn't know was a sensitive area for certain people or whatever, or maybe just in general, I shouldn't be saying them, but we've all seen that I can't stop doing that. So, whatever. But I said something, I think it was the day we met, and it struck a nerve with you. And the thing that I appreciated, well, not this part. You started crying, and the thing that I appreciated it was after that, where you approached me and you said what you said hurt me, and I was able to apologize, and like I felt terrible, right? I think I gave you a hug, and like there was so much trust built there that like you and I, like you were new, and I had established friendship because I had been in a Blaze for years at this point, and like you and I like became like you were my closest friend there when we were working there for years. And I think part of it was that is that I think at the time the reason that I appreciated it was because and we're going to talk about working with me later, but it came to my attention later that other people did not like how I operated or worked or said things or talked to them or whatever, but they kept it all to themselves and just no, that's a lie. They didn't keep it themselves. They kept it from anyone but me.
We tend to do that as humans.
Right. So like everybody knew that like everybody had a problem with me except for me. So I just kept doing the thing because it seemed to be working. Right. So just the honesty and the openness and the like, hey, you suck. Could you not do that anymore? I'm like, oh, sure. I'm sorry. Right.
I didn't phrase it like that.
It's how I heard it. I'm just kidding. But it was funny because I was telling the story to your husband while we were at a baby's birthday party, which is, this is what you do at baby's birthday parties, I guess. Eating Mario cupcakes and talking about
it was the best themed party. Can I just say?
It was very good. It was very good. But he was like shocked. He was like, yeah. He's like I was shocked at how unshocked he was. He's like, yeah, relationships are built on trust and communication. Like that makes total sense to me. And I was like, it was revolutionary in my life at the time. So you found a good one. I'm very happy.
He's the best. Oh my gosh. He is so great. But yeah, I mean, vulnerability is so important in relationships. And when you don't talk about the things that frustrate you later on, like there's going to be a blow up or something, and the person's going to be just so shocked. Like, what did I do? I had no idea. And so I think it's just so important to share the things that frustrate you and share the things that bring you joy so that the people in your life can love you better.
Like one of the reactions that I have now in almost every interaction is second guessing how that went. It's like, I thought that interaction went well, but I've had so many interactions, especially during that span of time, that I thought went well and everybody hated me behind my back. And I was like, well, now, no, so like, it's still there, right? There's some like PTSD of like, oh, did I talk too much? Did I say the wrong thing? Did I say the wrong, like whatever? Did I offend them? Whatever. And so I just appreciate when people are like, hey, I am enjoying this conversation. I am not enjoying this conversation, or I'm just not interested in this conversation. So.
Yeah. I can genuinely relate to that so much. And I specifically think back to, there was a moment in high school where something that one of my friends was doing was really bothering me. And I let it go like a year and a half. I just would continue to get frustrated. And the night before we graduated from high school, we had a phone call about it. And it was just one of those things where it was like, if one of us had talked about those things a year and a half prior, our friendship would have grown and blossomed. But because of that, instead, we struggled, and it wasn't a friendship that continued after high school. And I look at that, and there's been so much grace and goodness that has come from it to help form friendships that I have here now.
Right. Yeah, that's typically what people do when they're doing it incorrectly. They wait until the eve of the happiest day of your life at the time. They're like, hey, you want to put a damper on this?
Exactly.
So I'm glad you learned through that experience so that I didn't have to have that experience with you. So you and I worked together at a Blaze, and I remember it is funny that you and I are as close friends as we are, and that like you're the only one of them that I still work with, right? Like it seemed to have worked out for us, right?
You only have one employee, so that's
right, exactly. Not many options, but it's interesting to me that like we started the way that we did, not only with that first interaction, but what I remember of that time is you stepped in to, so we were working on a youth ministry team, right? And I was like the head person, and there were, a junior high youth minister and a high school youth minister. And you were coming in as a junior high youth minister, and the high school youth minister has been there for a while. And I was in this position where like she had like tenure. She was doing a pretty good job. She kind of knew what she was doing. You came in with like different ideas. You were good too. But for whatever reason, there was just like some personality conflicts. I think is probably the easiest way to say that, right? Like personality conflicts, thinking of like what could be done, disagreements on what could be done best, right? It's not like one of you was like, hey, we should teach the catechism. The other one was like, we should punch the kids in the face. Like it wasn't like, it wasn't like a clear right or wrong. It was more like, good people can disagree kind of thing. It was this interesting thing because like the high school youth minister and I were close and had worked together for a while. You came in, you were new, and it was this like, I remember you crying a lot in our meetings, and I was like, I don't know what to do about this. So I'm hoping there's going to be some comparing and contrasting as we talk about what it's like to work with me. But you have started working with me now twice because you've worked here since. When did you start this year? It feels like it's been many years at this point, but you started earlier this year.
I want to say May. No, it was earlier than that because we moved in May. So I don't know, April, March.
Okay, so it's been we're coming up. It's most of this year. So you and I have gone through the first 8-9 months of working together a couple of times, and I think this time is going better. What a lot of what we did was like you were new in youth ministry. You grew up in youth ministry, but this was, to my understanding, your first like youth ministry job, right? You had worked with retreats and stuff before.
I had done an internship the year going into my freshman year so it was the summer going to my freshman year of college. Yeah.
Gotcha. But so this is your first time working in youth ministry. It was your second job because before you started working with in your period of Arrested Development, you worked for a marketing firm, yeah, or worked doing marketing.
I just can't handle you. Yes, for a year and a half, I did a marketing job.
Okay, that'll come into play later. So you're at a marketing job. You came into doing youth ministry. So what are your memories from like early months of working with Taylor in youth ministry?
Well, the first thing that stands out is that you're loud.
The first thing you did was stare up to the heavens and take a long pause. I'm like, uh-oh.
No, I'm just having to really think far back. This was 6 years ago now.
Right.
I remember you being loud. That's for sure. Number one.
Not a shock. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. This is really taking me back in the day. But I do as I was reflecting before I came on to this.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, this shouldn't be a shock that we're talking about this.
Yeah. The thing that I remember, maybe, you were talking about this memory that was kind of like a big foundational moment for our relationship, for our friendship. But there was another one too that stood out to me. And it was when we were on a retreat we had like a week-long staff retreat. And it's just hard. Like being a youth minister is really difficult. And I would argue that even like once you've been a youth minister for 10 years, it's still hard. But within this was like, I had only been a youth minister, like legitimately a youth minister for a few weeks at this point, but then been on staff for 6 months. And so I was still struggling with figuring out the relationships between the other people on the team too and everything. And I just remember there being a moment where I was just so upset about something. And I went outside to play basketball by myself, and you just came out and followed me. And we just talked as we played basketball together for like an hour. And that to me was like a really big part of our friendship, where it started, because it meant so much to me that you saw that I was in pain and hurt, and you came out to just help me. And like we talked about it, but really it was just like working off the frustration by playing basketball together.
What you're saying is we had a very good conversation during our silent day of the retreat.
Probably. We were always trying to get around that silent day.
I think it's very fun because I do remember this moment, and I'm glad that it meant a lot to you. But I think my primary recollection of that was I am done being quiet. The basketball is making noise. It seems like if the basketball can make noise, so can we. I do remember. I do remember that. So that's very good. I like that we have two different foundational moments for our friendship. That's very nice. It took you a little longer. Fair enough. Because of the first foundational moment, it took you a little longer. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say the first foundational moment I was mad at you, and we cleared things up. But the second one was you coming and like coming after me, and like the goodness of your heart, and I got to really see that day.
Well, that is nicer than I anticipated. Because you said something a few weeks ago, maybe it was a couple months ago now, but most of our meetings had been pretty technical, like because you started working here, and you're doing primarily editing audio and video projects because that's like the main thing that we do throughout the week. And you had like you're an artist you're a natural artist, and like by trade you've done a lot of like design stuff and photography and like images and that sort of thing. But you had done a little things like with when you're a youth minister you have to learn a little bit of everything, right? So you've done a little bit of video audio editing, but most of our meetings were like, hey, we are like the benefit of working together and like being friends already. It's like we don't have to do that like weird get to know you part of the work. I'm just like, hey, I know you pretty well. Here's how to take out a cough in a audio edit, right? So most of our meetings were pretty technical, and I remember because I had some like I remember wanting to be like, look, let's just stop and like talk as people, right? Because this is new for both of us. Like I had like people have helped me in the past as like freelancers, right? But this was the first time that I was like investing in somebody that like I think this is gonna work out, right? So I remember being like, okay, let's just stop and talk. Like, how is this going? And one of the main things that I remember from the like, how is this going? Was like, this is so much better than the first time we worked together. I was like, that'd be a fun thing to talk about. So I'm like, okay, if this is better, that means that when we started, it wasn't great. And then I ask you about that, and you're like, actually, here's the sweetest thing you've ever done. And I'm like, okay, great. So let's contrast a little bit, because now it just sounds like I'm an angel all the time, and I don't think that's true at all.
So come up with a moment when I hated your guts.
Sure.
No.
I think here. Let me rephrase. Let me tell you kind of where I'm coming from. Right.
Okay.
Is I have had a lot of people tell me over the last few years, like, oh, you've changed a lot or you've grown a lot. And if I'm being honest, I don't see it at all. And if I see any change, I think it's been negative. Like, I think I'm a worse Catholic than I was in college. I think I'm a worse Catholic than I was, whatever. Like, okay, I think I'm probably better at parenting. Like, so it's not like everything's just been downhill, but it's like, you don't see the change when you're always with the person. Just like, you know, like when you're with your husband, I'm with my wife, I'm with my kids. Like, it's harder to see like, oh, yeah, like people do it with my son all the time. They're like, oh, he grew a lot. I'm like, I don't know, man. He was just growing 0.001 centimeters every day.
So much. Right. It's insane. When I saw him 2 weeks ago, I was like, what is going on?
Yeah, but like, I don't know. I'm like, it's not like he woke up one day, was 4 inches taller. I'm like, oh my goodness, like, so when you're around people, and that includes like yourself, it's like, you don't notice change a lot. And so even in like our different experiences, because I do think it's going better this time working together than it did especially at the beginning of us working together the last time. And I don't know if it's that I've changed or that just that the circumstances are different. Right. So there are just people that are like, oh, you've changed. And I'm like, I don't know. I just feel like I'm just, like a less hairy on the top, more hairy on the face version of the 18-year-old me. Like maybe a little fatter too, but like a physical change, right? Like you can see gradual over time, but I don't know. So that's kind of like what I've been thinking about as I've been like thinking about this conversation.
Yeah. I'm comparing it to now. So I think, first of all, I just think that you're so good at your job. And you're so, because of your experience, you know that you're good at it. So you go in with that knowledge, and you are determined to teach, and you know that you're teaching very well. When it came to Ablaze, I think that we were all struggling with relationships. And so because like maybe you were struggling with a relationship with someone else, then when it came to like me struggling with the relationship of somebody else, like kind of walking through that was difficult. And I feel like we just weren't set up for success anyways in that. Versus this isn't managing relationships, it's managing something that you know that you do very well. And so as you've taught me each step by step of what to do, it's very clear that you knew, okay, I'm only going to teach Sarah this one part, and this is my goal. And I'm going to get to this goal, but we have multiple steps to get there. And now that I feel like I can edit podcasts very well, and there's very rarely something that you tell me I did wrong, I reflect on it now and I can see how you took each step to get to where we are now. Versus I think that in youth ministry, maybe those steps seem to be difficult for all of us to get there.
Yeah. I think there's and that's kind of what I was saying about the difference in circumstances. I think the biggest difference in circumstance is youth ministry or relationships are subjective, right? Like you can build your perfect youth night. I can build my perfect youth night. Like,
Yeah.
like the irony of that job is like you were new and you were the one that lasted there the longest. Like you ended up taking my job, like the leader of the whole thing, right? Which is just kind of a funny thing. But youth ministry and relationships are subjective. And like I was your like boss mentor, right? So I'm like trying to help you navigate this stuff. But like even in those meetings, I'm like, there's not a cut and dry answer. It's like you could try to do that, just like in any relationship. If you're having a struggling relationship with somebody, it's like, anybody listening to this could be like, hey, it might be nice to like get them a gift, even if they're mad at them. And some people are like, ooh, that would solve everything. And other people are like, that you're just trying to buy their love, right? Like literally just that one action could be viewed differently by different people. And everybody could come up with like, hey, maybe you just need to talk it out. Hey, you just need to let it fade. Like, don't talk it out. Just kind of like see if it fades over time. Maybe they're just having a bad day. Maybe you're having a bad day. Like there's so much subjective and there's not a clear cut and dry answer. And there's so many just different personalities involved that it's just like, I don't know, man. Like I remember sitting in those meetings and be like, I don't know what I'm doing. Right. Like you don't know what you're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. But like and because it's subjective, it's one, harder for me to give advice. And two, it's harder for me to tell somebody when they're doing something wrong, because that might just be me thinking they're doing something wrong, right? When it comes to something objective, like with audio editing, especially, it's like I've been doing that for longer than I've been doing youth ministry. And it's like, one, it's objective. You either did the thing or you did not do the thing. It either sounds good or it does not sound good, right? And there's objective things to say. And then it like frees me up to like say, hey, there's a right answer to this. And if you didn't do it that way, then you did it wrong. Like it's kind of hard for me to tell people, like the two places that I find it easiest, it's telling to somebody that they did something wrong is not fun. So like in relationships, I'm not very good at it, right? But like when it comes to like work, like, so like the primary places that I tell people they do something wrong and I don't feel terrible about it is audio editing stuff and coaching. Like with the track stuff, I'm like, you either did it right or you did it wrong. And like being told you did something wrong is not fun. It's not an enjoyable experience. But the whole point is like, if you have a coach or a boss or whatever telling you like, hey, this is how you get better. So I don't know. There was something freeing about that I don't think I ever realized. I never really thought about coaching either, but I thought about it with working with you. It's just like, this is just so much more objective. So it's just easier to be truthful without worrying about hurting people's feelings. It's just like, hey, you made 30 mistakes on the last one. You made 4 on the next one. Congratulations. You only made 4 mistakes. Like that's huge progress, right? So yeah, that's been one of the biggest differences that I've noticed.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point. I hadn't thought about it in that way, the subjective versus objective. I mean, you said that I took your job after you, and I can reflect on that now and see that there were so many times that I failed. There were certain people that I worked with that we got along so well. We could read each other so easily. I wouldn't even have to say, hey, like you need to go do this thing. They were already 3 steps ahead in doing it, versus there were other people that were maybe super new at their job and they didn't know at all what to do. And so in my mind, I'm like, you're doing it wrong. But I do agree with you that there are so many different ways to lead youth. And I mean, when you look at our time there, we changed our method like 6 different times, and each way there were different youth that responded well to that. And so I completely agree that when you look at something objective like audio editing, you know that you did it wrong, or you did it right. You took out the cough, or you didn't take out the cough.
Right. The irony of you saying that while I'm currently muting myself so that you don't have to take out as many of my coughs today. I'm going to leave a few just for you, just to prove the point. But okay. This went differently than I thought it was going to. I guess it's good. I think I'm coming out of this conversation looking better than I actually am.
Well, I just like to see the good in people.
Okay, so some of the things. So we'll trying to think. We'll take a break here in a second. We're going to talk about your wedding, but a couple other things that were like pivotal moments in our friendship. This was the thing. I do remember one little thing that you don't like about me. And I don't think it's a big deal at all. But I always say that I have a favorite, and you don't like this. And there's some irony in me saying that the reason you don't like favorites and the reason that I say I have favorites is it's just there has a very ironic connection. Do you recall this?
Are you saying like favorite humans or favorite like alcoholic beverage?
Oh, like favorite people.
Oh, yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah. So I always have a favorite kid. It just happens to rotate. I think it was pretty clear because of my role. I don't know if it's anything I ever said out loud, but like you show who your favorite people are, like in a workplace by who you spend time with, one. But especially because of the position that I was in, like what I moved into like a marketing role, right? And a big part of my marketing role was traveling with people. I was traveling and going to recruit and going to like essentially market for a Blaze. And I was like the primary person. So like I was the constant, and then I would bring people with me. And anytime you're going to travel with somebody for 4 days, like, you're going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You're going to get on flights. You're going to, do the flights together. You're going to be with somebody for 3 or 4 days. I'm not going to bring the people that I don't like. Like that's just not how that works. Right. I'm going to bring people not even that I feel neutral about. I would like to, in every scenario, bring my favorite people to go hang out with. Because one, like, yes, it's my favorite people, but two, when you're doing marketing stuff, it's like my favorite people tend to be people who are good with people that would have good conversations that, whether not necessarily extroverts. Well, that does help at events like this, but I would also bring like my favorite introverts. Because I think like, you can extrovert a little bit. You can promote us.
Oh, I can definitely extrovert.
Yeah. Right. So you quickly became one of the people that was traveling with me more often than not. And so I just thought it was ironic that you didn't like that I had favorites. Yeah, you benefited from me having favorites pretty often.
I was thinking the whole time I really did benefit from being your favorite. I really did benefit from being your favorite.
I mean, you still are, if we're being honest. We are both benefiting from you being one of my favorites from working together.
Gosh. Yeah, we got to travel all over the country. That was awesome. I'm glad about that.
Which is funny because my primary memory of traveling with you, every time I think of it, my left arm hurts quite a bit.
I am so scared of heights. Okay.
So when we would travel, you would typically sit next to. Typically, we would travel 2 guys, 2 girls. Just it made it easier for hotels and all that kind of stuff. But typically you would, whether it was your assigned seat or not, you would come sit with me or one of the other people that you liked. And when we were landing or taking off from the plane, you would squeeze my arms so hard. Like my wife has like birthed 3 children, and she might have squeezed me that hard one time.
Exaggerating.
So yeah, you did not like traveling on planes, and yet you still chose to travel with me multiple times.
Yeah.
You're a very silly person.
My hands are probably sweating just thinking about traveling, honestly, or flying.
My left arm is swelling up currently. Yeah, and then you left, and I guess I left first, and then you stayed for a while. You were like, I care about the children. I'm like, I'm leaving.
You don't care about the children or...
Yeah. But then you ended up leaving and getting married, and we're going to tell that story after we take a quick break. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. As this episode is releasing, we are nearing the end of Giving Tuesday. But if you have not reached the end of your generosity, if you have not reached the end of your bank account, Forte Catholic could use your help here in this holiday season. We are a Catholic nonprofit. What do? We make podcasts like this one and many others, helping other people learn about Catholicism, experience Catholicism in a new way here on podcasting apps, YouTube, and on social media, all that sorts of things. We also travel, give talks, lead worship to help people grow in their faith walk with God and his church. If that's something that you would like to support, you can do so at fortecatholic.com/donate. You can give a one-time donation in honor of Giving Tuesday and the season of giving, or if you would like to become part of the backbone of what we do, you can join us in giving monthly. Our monthly supporters really are the bedrock that keep us going, whether it's $5 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month. It all helps us to continue to be able to put out the best Catholic content that we can, and to continue doing the ministry that we do in person as well. So again, that's fortecatholic.com/donate if you are feeling generous today. Thanks. We appreciate it. Welcome back to Forte Catholic. I am Taylor Stroll, and that is Sarah Allen. It's still very difficult for me to not call you Miss Lessman, because that's what I called you for many, many years. It's not just that it was your last name. It's I never called you Sarah.
Yeah. Every phone call, every time I'd call you, you're like, hi, Miss Lessman.
Your face made me look like I was so excited every time. I don't know if I was that happy every time I called you. Yeah, there you go. Speaking of Lessman, though, you mentioned something earlier. You mentioned that your dad, your parents, raised you in the faith, and all that stuff. You kept going, so I didn't want to interrupt you, but I did think it was very funny. Your dad has always seems to like me because you and I would travel a lot together. Like I would drop you off at your parents' house in Houston, like after flights to and from Houston or whatever. So it's like, I got to know your family. Like I've dropped you off at 11 o'clock at night after a conference at your sister's house in San Antonio. Like I've gotten to know your family, and they seem pretty friendly. And so I was shocked last week when the newest like on our Facebook post, or on our Facebook page, like the Forte Catholic Facebook page, was your dad. And I was like, I'm happy you're doing it, but where have you been? Like I've been close with your daughter for 5 years. We won't say it yet, but I played a role at your wedding with him, and yet he still hadn't liked the page. You've worked here for 9 months. I was just shocked by the whole thing.
I have nothing to say to that. But,
I was just like,
I guess that was his choice.
All right, man. I appreciate it. There had to be one Lessman that liked the page, I guess. So when you and I worked at a Blaze, there was this phenomenon. I don't know if it seems to be a national thing, because it's like I have friends on Twitter, Instagram, whatever. There seems to be a theme where like there is a group of young 20s to 30, maybe even a little older than 30, of and we worked with a lot of them, where I was so shocked. I'm like, how are you not married? Like, what's going on here? Because there's a group of pretty devout Catholic women who would like to be married, who want to be moms, who would make great moms, and they're just constantly single. And I'm like, what's going on here? Like the guys at a Blaze would talk about it pretty often, because most of the guys at a Blaze were married. So it's that's not our problem, but we'd be like, where are the good, young, Catholic, single, devout Catholic young men to come take these ladies off of our hands? Like somebody else needs to take care of this. Right. So, that was the case with you. That was the case with a lot of your friends. And it took some time, but there's a good end to this story. You're all now either married or becoming a nun, right? Yeah. So one lady was just like, I'm done with this whole dating scene. I'm going to Italy to become a sister. But the rest of you are all married now, and I'm very happy about that. We know the end of the story. You got married. Congratulations, hooray! But I'm an outsider looking at this situation. Like, I never understood what was going on. I didn't know, like, I was like, I don't know. Does she turn into an ogre at night? Like, I don't understand what's happening. So let's talk a little bit about that experience, because I cannot talk about the experience of being a young, pretty Catholic, devout woman, but you can. So,
yeah, it is a serious problem that women everywhere are single and desiring marriage and not getting asked out on dates. People going years and years without being asked out on a date, or even, people that are 30, 31, 32, never being asked out on a date. One of my best friends, bridesmaids, is one of the most hilarious women I've ever met. She is honestly drop dead gorgeous and is still single and desires marriage so badly. And, we just pray for all these women every day. But you look at, growing up, everyone around you was married. I really didn't know any single women growing up. And maybe that was just, the people I was surrounded by. But to me, it's
your
very
parents
clearly
kept them away. They're like, let's keep these ladies away from our children.
Yeah. But it's very clearly a problem. And I think part of it maybe is that men are discerning the seminary a little bit too late. And so, like, during the season when there are a lot of single men and women together, the men are discerning, and so they're not asking the women out on dates. And so maybe that could be part of the problem. But it is really sad seeing all these women not going out on dates and really desiring to be married and have kids.
Yeah, it saddens me too, and it was like, it put me in like this kind of weird position. Because like, I'm married, so it's like, I don't want to be like, it was this thing where I would see these like people like you and a lot of your friends at a Blaze that I was close with, and it's like, I would see y'all getting down about like not dating or not going on dates and all this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I would love to help, but I there's not a way for me to help, right? So I was like, what is a way that I can help? And I was like, even that, and like with y'all, it's like, I think I built up enough of a trust where I'd be like, I just wanted to let y'all know that y'all were pretty Catholic, devout, like desirable. Like, it's this thing in like a guy's heart where like, you want the ladies in your life that you care about to like feel loved, desired, cherished. Like, that's a natural thing, right? And it's like, that's meant for our wives, but like, y'all are all younger than me, so a lot of y'all were like little sisters to me. It's like, you want the ladies in your life that you care about to feel loved and cherished and desired, right? So it's like, I wanted to communicate that like, you're not a failure as a person, which like, I think a lot of times some of y'all would feel like that, without being like weird. Like, I didn't want to be the married guy, like, that seems like I was hitting on people, but it's just like, I want you to know that you're a good person and that it's the guy's fault. That's essentially where I was at. So it was just kind of this strange thing where and then like with the guys, I'm like, ask them out. Like, what's the worst that could happen? So it's just kind of it was a strange thing, because I feel like I missed it. Like, I got married so young, which is not a thing that you tell to people when they're not married. Like, I didn't remind you of that over and over again before you got married, but it's just like, I didn't have to deal with this, right? I didn't have to deal with like finding somebody late. And like, so it's harder for me to connect with people now, both men and women, because like you said, it is a huge problem now that like, we talked earlier about like, I'm good at helping people with things that I'm really good at, but I never had to experience this. So why would I be any good at it? So, yeah.
And I think part of it too is that our generation was told that we should choose our career over our vocation. And so women are constantly, going to college, getting a career and focusing on that and trying to immediately just jump into that. And even when we're in our careers, it's hard for us to find a time and find a place to meet good, holy single men. And so, and then even when we do, these men aren't asking women out on dates. And so it is just really difficult on both ends. So I don't think it's just the man's fault. I think it's also the woman's fault. But I do wonder why even when a man does see a woman that he's attracted to, he doesn't ask her out.
So I agree. There's fault to go around, but it's 90% on the dudes.
90% lefties, is that what you said?
90% on the dudes.
Oh. I was like, lefties are weird, but I don't understand.
Yeah, it's their fault too. I feel perfectly fine saying that. Okay, so thank God it got solved for you. This is very funny. This story is a beautiful story that you're about to share, but there have been some connections in with other people in my life that I thought have been pretty interesting for a pretty similar situation. So you were single, working, you had expressed to me multiple times that you would like to, I would like to be married. Yeah, I'd like to, raise a family, all this kind of stuff, right? And then, spoiler alert, we already said that you're married. So how did that happen? It's actually a pretty fun story.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking about, before I get started into that I have been to so many weddings. My life is literally 27 dresses. Is that what that? Yeah, that's what that movie's called. 27 dresses. My life is literally the movie 27 dresses. And I have been I've been a bridesmaid so many times. I've been to like at least, I'd say 100 weddings at this point, single. And so each wedding was just that much more difficult, desiring marriage and seeing friends get married one after the next, and really asking the Lord, like, why am I not married? And even asking, like, am I not good enough for this vocation? And so it kind of got put on my heart that I needed to start asking people to set me up, or going to.
I tried. You refused my offer.
Yeah, well, I know who you're talking about, and I wasn't interested. I know what I want, Taylor, and I found him. But yeah, so, going to different cities and hanging out with their friends and getting to know other people, and maybe just gathering and getting to know more people was really important. And so I told my sister this idea, and a few weeks later she texts me. She's like, can we talk? I'm like, okay, sure. She's like, I have someone in mind for you, but I just want to like see what you think. I think you'd be interested, but I was like, okay. And she told me that it was her best friend's brother, who I knew in college. He started at A&M when I was a senior. He transferred to A&M when I was a senior, and I was gone for that semester during the Disney College program. And so I came back for one single game with Becca, and we actually sat with her best friend, her now husband, and then my now husband. So that was actually the first time that we met, was at this football game, which I don't remember at all. But needless to say, I knew him. We had many conversations in the past, and for some reason, like every time I would like pray about who my future husband would be, it was like, you already know who this person is.
Bryce.
Yeah.
God's trying to make it super clear, and you're like, what? What about rice? What do you say?
It's like, go through my phone contacts, like, who do I already know? But yeah, so she called me, and it was immediately just this very humbling and purifying and healing. It was just such a healing experience. I can't even explain it to you, but just like the whole conversation, it just healed so many wounds that I had built up about like surrounding previous guys. The guy I dated before, I just had a lot of woundedness from that. And so I was so grateful for that conversation. And so I gave myself a couple of weeks to think about it, which he makes fun of me for so much now. And finally,
yeah, especially with like the position you were in, you were like, did it really take weeks for you to make this decision? Come on, Sarah.
But it did. I think that healing process continued over the next 2 weeks. And then I think what it was really was that I just like knew this was going to be who I was going to marry, like in that moment. And it kind of freaked me out. And so I was like, I need a little bit of time. And so
3 more weeks of singleness. Yeah. I've done it this long. I can do 3 more weeks.
Honestly, though, So I took that couple of weeks, prayed about it a lot, and just to heal those wounds, and then said yes. And we immediately started talking. And he was in the Coast Guard, and so he was up in where his family was for Christmas, and took a detour to College Station to go on a date with me on his way home from Christmas. And we talked for a few hours. It was really great. At some point, his brother, who had driven with him, like peeked into the room, and I had no idea that he was there. And he actually sat like right behind us to make fun of his brother. And it was great. It was great. And
leave
then
it to brothers to almost ruin what had a really good ending to this story.
And he's still trying to ruin it today. No, I'm kidding. And so I just totally, like, after that first coffee date, we continued talking, and just something that was really different about this relationship was I felt really called to let him lead. And before, if I was interested in a guy, I was the one kind of trying to put myself out there and like pursue him. But this time it was taking a step back and letting him pursue me. And so it went from texts to phone calls to I went to meet up with you when you were doing a trivia night, and we were on the phone. And that was when he asked me to come visit for the first time. And I went in.
Yeah, super rude to ignore me like that.
So I went down and visited him, and it just started, like, again, just a slow process of discernment. And then as soon as it was like, there was just this moment where we talked about it and we both knew, and the Lord just like put it on both of our hearts, and we just went straight to marriage, and it's just been the absolute best thing. His family is so close, and a prayer of mine and desire of mine has always been that our parents and our families would know each other really well. Because growing up, my grandparents on both sides of my family were best friends. Like, we all went on a cruise together, like both sides of my family, all of my cousins, we all went on a cruise because both sets of grandparents were celebrating the 50th anniversaries. And they even still to this day take each other out for birthdays and for anniversary meals and things like that. And so that's been something that was on my heart. And so when it was just even more confirmed that this was what we were supposed to do, because our families were already so close and our sisters were best friends. But he is just so amazing. He's so good. I love how knowledgeable he is and how goofy he is, how close he is with his family members. Whenever they get together, they laugh so hard they cry. It's just so funny and so good. And I'm really grateful to be a part of the family and to be married to him.
Yeah, I'm so happy for you. And I could tell, like, throughout this whole thing, like, you've just been genuinely happy, like, the entire time, which is just really good. So it was cool for me that I had this realization. I shared it with you and Bryce. I don't know if I shared it before, but whenever I saw y'all last weekend, like, my sister's wedding was just a few weeks ago, and
Right.
I hadn't made the like. There have been a lot of connections that I have made, and I've shared these with you, like, but where you and my sister are very similar. Like, my sister is 4 years younger than me. You're 4 years younger than me. Like, which baffles me and kind of blows my mind. Like, because I've said multiple times, like, my sisters still seem like the age that they were when I left high school, because it's like, once I left high school, like, I didn't come back, like, I went off and lived my life, I mean, like, I came back for holidays, but I didn't, like, go live there, right? So, like, my sister would have been 13, 14 when I left, and the other sister would have been like 10, and they're both married now, and I'm like, this is illegal, you can't marry a 10-year-old, like but there's been a lot of similarities with, like, essentially my sister was in a very similar scenario that you were in, right? Like, pretty devout Catholic, wanted to be married, wanted to be a mom, and just wasn't meeting anybody, right? And a pretty similar kind of thing. Like, she went to school, was working, was very introverted, like, wasn't in a lot of places where, like, she would meet new people, pretty similar, right? And for you, it was your sister introducing you to your now husband. For my sister, it was my parents and my sister's now husband, his parents went on vacation together, like they did not go on vacation together.
Right,
they went on
right.
vacation separately. They met, and my parents are from Southern Louisiana, and like if you know people from Southern Louisiana, you know exactly what they sound like. And I guess they just heard them. They just heard my sister's husband's parents talking in various Southern Louisiana. So they got together, started talking about Southern Louisiana things, and they both realized that they had like an eligible bachelorette that both wanted to be married. And they were like, hey, they should meet. And then they met, and now they're married. And I'm just saying, this is just, it's so
cool.
like, it's so cool. I'm so happy for both of you. But I like, it's just so foreign to me because I'm just like, I don't know. I just meet people where I see them. I'm like, you're cute. Would you like to meet up with me? You know? And so it's just really funny to me that like these two people that I care about that have in very similar situations had very similar outcomes because of similar reasons. It was just kind of this baffling thing for me. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, I love it.
So I got to, at your wedding, I got to provide a role that I didn't know was a role at weddings, which kind of seems like you're just throwing somebody a bone. That's a little bit what it feels like. You're like, hey, we don't have a role for you here, but you can do this thing that we made up. So,
what, you wanted to be a bridesmaid, Taylor?
I did. I for one of our other friends, I was the flower girl. Jennifer for Jennifer, who is another Incarnate Word Academy person, ironically enough. My daughter was supposed to be the flower girl. She freaked out and did not want to go and did not want to walk down the aisle. So I walked down the aisle, putting down flowers while holding my daughter. So,
okay. At least you were still holding her. For some reason, I was imagining probably Maggie.
Give me your dress. I need to put this dress on real quick. No, yeah, it was Maggie. She was very tiny. So it was actually the same building, which is kind of funny. The same building where I was a flower girl. I was also this other thing, and it seemed made up, but it was actually a really special moment. And I'm really happy that you asked me to do it. But it's one of those, like, at least to me, these newer wedding traditions. So what did I do at your wedding? And yeah, tell us that story.
Well, you held the door open for me.
I sure did.
As I walked in alongside with one of our old coworkers. And both of you have just been such brother figures in my life. And it's,
he's so like 78 years old, right? I'm just kidding.
That's rude. But yeah, so y'all have both been brotherly figures in my life. And so to see you two and to also have my dad next to me was just very calming to have y'all there. And you guys both prayed over me before I walked down the aisle because, you start to get a little bit jittery beforehand. And so it was just.
What people don't know is you tried to run away. I had to go tackle you.
Oh my God. Don't ever tell Bryce. Yeah. So that was awesome. And a fun fact about that is that my husband held the door open for my sister before she walked in to get married. So my husband and brother-in-law. So my sister's best friend's brother. My sister's best friend's husband, alongside my husband, held the door open for Becca as she walked down the aisle.
That's so cool.
So I just think it is a beautiful role. Yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those things that, like, when you asked me, just because I'd never seen it before, I'm just like, okay, like you want me to hold the door, and it ended up being a way more special experience than I anticipated, because I just thought, like, when you hear hold the door, you're just like, okay, here you go, which, like, I've done a lot of church work where, like, you do things behind the scenes, like a lot of our work that we do here is behind the scenes editing stuff. So, like, I thought it was going to be like just like legitimately just open the door, she'll walk by. But, like, you ended up standing there for like a solid, like, 3 or 4 minutes. We talked to you, we prayed with you, and like, oh yeah. And it was cool because it seemed like a microcosm, like, of our friendship, like, of our whole relationship, because, like, you were nervous. And I think, like, having your dad and these 2 other people that have meant a lot to you, like, you calmed down. Like, we physically saw you calm down because we talked with you, we prayed with you. And one thing that I will never forget is I was the first, this might not be true, but because other people probably might have seen it behind the scenes, right? Like I think there's always like, I don't know what women do at weddings because I've never been one. But like, I think there's like the first look and like, like the ladies probably saw you in your dress before the wedding, right? But like before Bryce saw you, before your dad saw you, you peeked out of the chapel and I'm just like, hi, like I got to see you. And I was one of the first people to see you. That meant a lot to me. I was like, I was so happy for you. And it was just like this special moment of like, oh, not only am I holding the door, like I got to say hi before anybody else did. This is nice.
And it was also another calming moment because I was by myself in there and I'm just getting really jittery,
right.
I'm like, I'm like, my dad gonna come back?
Right. And I was just like being silly, like, hello, I haven't seen you yet today. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it was definitely a good moment.
It was very sweet. So you've been married for what, 10 months now?
9 months.
9 months. Yeah. So
it'll be 10 months next month.
That is how months work. Well, it'll be 11 after that, and then a year.
And that is because it's closer to 10 months now than 9 months.
My favorite thing is that you know me so well that you immediately realized the door you opened for me, and then you immediately tried to shut it, which is great. But you've been married for 9 months. What are the big takeaways from being married for 9 months? What are the how you feel?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, it is actually the greatest time of our lives. Genuinely the best.
And you've never felt this way before?
Never felt this way before.
Do you swear that this much is true? And you owe it all to me?
Are you singing a song?
Yeah, I am. Yeah,
I think I know the song.
Yes, you do. I had the time of my life.
Oh, yeah.
And I never felt this way before. You sang it. I
would have never gotten there.
I know. Please keep going.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely the best season of our lives. I'm trying to think of things to share about it, but we recently moved to be closer to his family after he got out of the Coast Guard. And we live near where there's a ton of hills, which I've never lived in a town with hills. So it's awesome. And his family lives out on some land. And so it's just really nice to get to go out there and spend some peaceful time together. So it's been a lot of really good quality family time. But just life together is so good. I mean, I pretty much look at him every single day with like a tear in my eye. And I just tell him I'm so grateful to be married to you.
You're like, I did it.
I do think that, and I think that maybe if there are any women that are listening to this that aren't married yet or have got married late, they'll like relate to this, but there's just that much more gratitude to be married, I would say, because of the wait. So I just feel like I'm slower to anger, frustration, or things that maybe would have frustrated me, when I was younger, just really don't frustrate me at all. And I think part of that is also the relationships that were built and the communication that was built with our previous job. The things that we were talking about earlier, that like we were managing relationships. And when you manage relationships so much, you do start to understand how to do that more. But my husband's just so good and peaceful and calm. And when I start to get angry about something, not related to him at all, but he's so calm and he just teaches me so much. So I'm just so grateful for every single day with him. We get to go on monthly dates together, or really, I mean, every night is a date, we love it. We do sushi Wednesdays together because HEB gives you cheaper sushi on Wednesdays, but it's just been so awesome.
They're about to throw it out and they're like, you can have a date. It's fine. She's been here since last Wednesday.
Oh, gross. Yeah. It's just been so awesome. I don't even know exactly what to say about it. But I feel almost like my life has really started in a sense. Like I know my life always was moving and going and I was getting to live in the daily present moment, but there's just something about, I wasn't in my vocation and now I am. Like this is the vocation I was made for. And I feel like we're both thriving in it.
So everything before 9 months ago was indeed Arrested Development. You agree with me?
My gosh.
I just started my life 9 months ago. Which means that I was some strange prep for your real life.
I guess so, Taylor.
Yeah. Well, good. I'm very happy for you. not that you've always been bubbly and happy, but there's just been something different about since you've been dating him and then since you've been married. I'm just really happy that you're happy. And it's funny, my wife just drove up, and it's funny, while you were talking, you were like, oh, I appreciate the marriage so much more because we waited. And I'm like, well, we got married at 22, so who's more thankful?
That is true too. I think that there's always going to be something you can be grateful for sure in your marriage.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It is funny because I one of the similarities between you and my wife is that I often communicate with y'all through the podcast. Like I have said things about you knowing that you're going to edit. I have been very complimentary of you. It's been great. It's been great working with you. It's been great seeing you grow very quickly in this audio editing and audio, video editing and stuff. You're very easy to work with. But it's funny, like there have been multiple times where I've communicated with her. I'm like, hey, there's a person in my life that's doing this thing that's frustrating with me. And then a month and a half later, she listens to it. And she's like, okay, I'll stop. I'm like, it's just way easier to communicate through the podcast than it is through anything else. So y'all have that in
instead of looking at her face to face.
100%. It's just way easier. It's just way easier to delay the conversation, but it's scheduled.
So does she need to start her own podcast now?
100%. But so in the first segment, we talked about what it's like working with me. What are the things that I have said multiple times on the show, not to your face, that I'm very thankful that you're working here, that you're working with me. It's cool because of everything that we talked about earlier, where I just like, I felt like I never really knew where I stood with people that I worked with because of all of the, questioning and talking behind my back. And like, I don't know, man. I don't know where, but when I'm like, hey, you want to work here? You're like, sure. I'm like, okay, good. Someone does like me. That's great.
Which we have to share the little background behind that. And that when I was trying to figure out what to do next, I started thinking, I listen to podcasts a lot. Maybe I could be a podcast editor. Let me text Taylor and see if he thinks that that's a good idea. And then you're like, you mean the job I've been trying to get you to do for the last 3 years?
It's so funny because there have been a couple of people where I have dropped hints where I'm like, look, I never want to be the guy that steals somebody away from a job, especially when like that job is with other people that I have relationships with, right? But I'm like, hey, if you're going to leave that job, just come and have a conversation with me before you go somewhere else. Because that has happened too, where I'm like, hey, I'd love to work with this person. And then they leave their job and go to another job. I'm like, hey, we don't even like, at least come have a conversation. Right. And you were one of those people. You left and you were like, and I'm like, what happened? What happened in the conversation? And then months later, it drove me crazy. You're like, hey, this is a good idea. I'm like, I know. I've been yelling at you that it's a good idea for years. We work very well together. And it was this interesting thing. So like, I knew that you hadn't edited much audio and video stuff, but I knew there's just something about the work that you've done, like the marketing stuff that you've done, like a lot of the stuff that we do ends up being like marketing. And I like you're very creative. You're actually a better creative than I am. You just hadn't worked in audio and video stuff. Right. So you picked it up so very quickly that it made it easier for me. Right. And like, it's just anything that I have asked, you have done. I'm like, hey, we need to fix this thing. And then you fix the thing. And then like the last like hurdle to get over is like, look, I one of the big things with like, behind the scenes, right, of like audio editing is like when you first start, like you got to the point where you're doing dang near perfect edits, right? Like because the whole thing with me is like, I am very not trusting with my work to other people. I actually hate it whenever other people are responsible for my work or like, they do the work and then I'm going to get blamed if it's bad. Like I hate that. Like if I'm going to mess up something with all of our clients or whatever, a relationship, whether it's with editing or whether it's with speaking or doing music or whatever, it's like, if it gets messed up, I want to be the person that messed it up. I don't want somebody else messing with my reputation. Right. So you got to the point pretty quickly of like, this edit is, you wouldn't know if I did it or if you did it, which is great. We got there so fast. And then I was like, look, it's just slow. Like, and that's a big thing with audio editing. It's like, it takes a long time. Like I can do it now where I'm barely thinking. And it's just like, hey, look, Catechism of the year, we did it. Like I didn't have to think that much. And I was like, look, it's taking you 8 hours to do something that I would do in 2 hours. I cannot charge my clients 8 hours because I won't have any clients left. So like, even that, I was like, look, I know it's hard, but here's some tips and tricks. And then like within 3 weeks, you got like, you like cut your time down by into a third of what it was. So I'm like, you're great.
Yeah. You know what happened in those 3 weeks though?
No.
I got a new laptop.
Oh, that's correct.
Yeah. So that changed everything. Thank you again for that.
Yeah.
Game changer.
Well, thank you to our donor who donated the money to get that laptop. It was funny. I was like, I don't know if it's her or the computer, so I'm gonna give her the computer to isolate which one of these things it is. So
it was both for sure, but
you've just been great. It's one of the things that I was I think one of the big blessings here is that like the biggest thing that I was worried about when you were coming on is like, I didn't know if you were going to be happy doing this kind of work. It's like, I knew I would be happy with you doing this kind of work, but I didn't know if you were going to be happy. Right. And that was like that meeting that we had of like, look, we've had all these technical meetings. Let's just talk how things are going. Right. And cause like my primary things was like, look, when we worked in youth ministry together, we were always surrounded by people. We were always either with the teens or you're with your core group or you're with like our other staff, and we would pray together as a staff. We'd have meetings with staff. We'd go to conferences together as a staff. Like we had a lot of like in-person time. And this work is a lot of sitting on a computer by yourself and doing work that like when you're with kids, you get a lot of feedback immediately. When you're doing audio editing, you don't get any feedback at all because our whole job is if we do a good job, it seems like we were never there and that the hosts are just good at their jobs. Like that's perfect, really. And like, so it's a pretty thankless job, right? Because like nobody knows you did it. It's not like, I think like, a garbage man. It's like a pretty thankless job, but like at least people see them doing it, right? Like our job is like the garbage just disappeared and we don't know what happened. So there's that, but then there's also just the like, there's just less people, less interaction. And like, I know that you like that interaction. You like that camaraderie. You like that sort of thing. So I was like pleasantly surprised when I was like, all right, this is working really well for me. Are you going to stay here for longer than 3 months because you're tired of doing things alone? And you did it. You're like happy with it, which makes me incredibly happy. So, yeah.
Yeah. I've enjoyed learning this new skill set. It's been pretty cool. And now I really know what you've been doing for the last 2 years. It's like, I edit podcasts and people are like, I didn't even realize people did that. I didn't know that was a thing, And so now I genuinely know exactly what you do. So it's been pretty cool.
The only way to show them is to find an unedited podcast and send it to them.
Yeah.
Here's what everything sounds like before we work on it. Yeah, it is just a really weird. I explain it to people, like especially with like Catechism of the Year, because that was like the most popular one. People are like, "Oh, you're working on it. Like, what does that mean?" I'm like, I don't know. I don't know, man.
Watch my YouTube lives.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just this idea of creativity, right? So like whenever you're teaching, I learned this whenever we worked in youth ministry together. There's this adage of like, when you're teaching somebody something, you tell them how it's done, show them how it's done, and then you let them do it while you watch, right? So it's like, hey, I need you to watch me run this youth night so that you can see how a youth night's run. Like, watch what I do. Like, because even when you're doing a public thing, like being a youth minister or youth night, there's some things that people won't see. Like, I got to go communicate with the kitchen staff. I got to go, turn this light on and off. I got to go check the bathroom, make sure kids aren't making out. Like, there's just like all these things that like people don't see, right? And then it's like, hey, I'm now you're going to do it and I'm going to watch and I'll be like, and I'll help you. If something goes incredibly wrong, like I'm the veteran in this, I'll step in and help or whatever. But then we'd have a meeting later in the week of like, hey, this is went really well. This could have been a little bit better. And, hey, maybe never, like, I remember there was one, it wasn't you, but there's somebody else. It was one of the funniest youth ministry stories. They bought these dodgeballs and they were like, we're going to use these dodgeballs. And I was like, you cannot use these dodgeballs. And they're like, why? We just bought them. We ordered them online. It took weeks to get here. Like, if we don't use these, it's going to take weeks. I was like, you cannot use these dodgeballs. And they were like, why? And I'm like, because people like me exist. And it's like me now, but also like me in high school. Like I will murder people with these dodgeballs. They were like the kind of dodgeballs that I can only imagine were legal in like 1940. Like when we were preparing for the World War, they were like, hey, let's simulate battle by using these dodgeballs. And the guy, it was just this, like, it was one of those most few moments in youth ministry where it was like black and white. I'm like, but the guy just wasn't getting it. He's like, oh, we really want to play with these. I'm like, do you want me to prove to you that we can't use these? He said, yep. And I said, we're going outside. I said, you stand about 20 yards that way, and I'm going to throw this dodgeball at you once. And I threw it, and he had a bruise on his leg for like 3 weeks. He learned his lesson.
Well, I never hear about this story.
Being a youth minister advisor for guys is a little bit different than for girls. I would hope I never gave you a single bruise. Nevertheless, one the size of an entire dodgeball on the back of your leg. So like once you teach somebody something, it is cool to see their creativity, right? So it's like I taught you how to edit audio first. And then we moved into the the big project of video. Like we're gonna add pictures to these audio clips, right? And then the final thing after doing full videos is like, okay, I'm gonna teach you how to like make these reels, these shorts or whatever, like these little promo things. And I taught you how to do them. And within a week, you had put your own creativity on it, where you were putting like better captions. You started adding these videos, like these other clips from like other cartoons and other shows and stuff that made the videos better, easier to watch, more accessible, more catchable. Like they were catching the eye, and they're just funny, where it's just like, Sarah, I don't even know how to do that. Like there's now a skill that you have.
I'll teach you.
Yeah, exactly. There's now a skill that you have where I was thinking about it, like legitimately, like for Christmas break, like we just talked about when you're going to work over Christmas. But I was like, if she leaves and doesn't do these promos, they're going to go back to being boring and nobody's going to watch them. Like they're just, and it's one of those things where it's like when I create something, right? Like I was here, like, yeah, I'm having a good time. This podcast is pretty typically a fun time for me. Right. But like once I say a joke, I might laugh at your joke, or I might even laugh at my joke, because a lot of times my jokes are surprises to me because you said something that I didn't see coming, and I'm like, hey, that was actually kind of funny, right? But I'm no longer surprised about it after the moment. And a lot of like comedy is surprise, right? So I create these videos, and then days later, I go and I watch them where you've added these clips, and I'm laughing at my own stuff now. I'm like, this is so funny. And it's not the stuff I'm saying, it's how well these videos that you were like, there was one last week where like it was, I was saying something semi-controversial, and you used a Simpsons clip to agree with me that made me look even worse, but it was genuinely hilarious. And you were like, I would have never said that, but I shared this clip because it was in your voice. And I'm like, I agree with you. So it's just been really fun to see like you get like part of the reason I wanted to work with you is your creativity. And when you're learning something, it's hard to be creative because you're trying to be so like get everything right. And now you have made Forte Catholic stuff more creative and better to the point where I don't know how to do it. So please never leave.
Man, I love creating those reels. It is the best part of the job because it uses the creativity. That's one of the reasons why I was like, please let me do this, because I wanted to use that creativity behind it. Right. And you were saying earlier that I've gotten rid of like every social media, but YouTube was still on my phone up until like 3 weeks ago, because I was just constantly scrolling through the shorts and watching like any short I could find, right? But like the ones where they added in those short little videos made them so much funnier. And so getting to actually do that is awesome. But I had to delete YouTube off my phone because I was constantly looking at them.
And you perfected the medium. So what do you need that for? All right. Well, this is fun. I'm thankful that you had this conversation with me today. I'm very thankful that you're working with me. I'm very thankful for all the work that you've done. I'm very thankful that you got married. I'm very thankful that Bryce makes you happy. And so this is just a little extension of our Thanksgiving episode, because I'm just thankful about all of this.
Just continue with the gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, I'm Taylor Scholl. I'll be back next week. She is Sarah Allen. She'll be on literally everything that's ever posted from this channel because she's constantly editing everything, making us look better, sound better, and even sound funny, which is rare around here. So I will be back next week. See ya. Thank you all for watching and listening to today's episode. I hope that you guys enjoyed hanging out with Sarah as much as I do. She's one of my favorite people, and I really am happy that I got to share her with you on today's episode. If you liked it, please hit subscribe wherever you are watching or listening. Today's episode was produced by me and edited by the one and only Sarah Allen. We will see you very, very soon. My light just fell, and we're leaving that in. I hope that your week is going better than mine. Love you.